key role in his life. Due to his extremely poor upbringing, Eminem turned to music to help him escape from the real world. Sadly, very early in his life, Bruce Mathers, Eminem's father, walked out on the family and moved to California, leaving both Marshall and his mother on their own. Losing his father at a very young age meant that his only male role model was his Uncle Ronnie. Ronnie inspired Marshall and introduced him to hip-hop from a very early age. It was this introduction that opened his eyes to the world of hip-hop.
From a young age, he started experimenting with rap after his mum's half-brother, Ronnie, bought him his first single, Reckless, which featured Ice-T, and that really kind of inspired him to go on and make his own raps and join his own rap crew.
He was also into like Two Live Crew and some of the rappers that were coming up in the late '80s and early '90s, and coming from an urban environment of Detroit, I don't think people really affiliated hip hop with Detroit so much until it exploded in the late '90s. But you could see that the roots to that music were laid much, much earlier in the late '80s and early '90s.
But also, very revealingly, he later said, hip hop, he said, is about manhood. It's about being macho. And somehow he could see, to entering that world, he could find his masculine power, his male power, his power as a man. It was the only way he could find it and express it. So not only was hip-hop, and not only was his music and his creativity an outlet for him to express himself and to find a way to express this crazy world in which he'd been born and grown up in, it was also his way to find his identity as a man.
Life changed drastically for Marshall in 1988, when Kimberly Scott entered his life. Debbie Mathers had always wanted a daughter, and she jumped at the chance to foster Kim. For Marshall, this would be a relationship that would have a defining impact on his life.
When Eminem was 15, she adopted Kim, who was later to become Eminem's wife, and lover, and we know all about how complex that relationship was. And amid these warring women, because Kim and Eminem and Kim and Debbie, everybody was fighting. It was a very turbulent environment. Among all these women fighting, you've got this, by Eminem's own admission, he described himself as a child. He said, I was puny, timid. So you have this puny, timid child among these warring women.
In 1991, Marshall received the tragic news that his Uncle Ronnie had taken his own life. The news devastated Marshall and turned his world upside down.
The man who introduced him to rap, his beloved Uncle Ronnie, took a gun and shot himself. And he shot himself, apparently, after being jilted or dumped by a girlfriend. So again, you have two potential male role models, one who abandoned him when he was only 6 months, then his beloved Uncle Ronnie, who abandoned him by killing himself. And both of them, in some way, shape or form, were led to abandon him through troubled relationships with women. His father abandoned him because he couldn't get on with his mother Debbie. Uncle Ronnie abandoned him because he killed himself over a woman. And so you have a pattern here. Two significant males, father figures and paternal figures in Eminem's life, disappear as a result of their relationship with women and leave him alone.
When he died, it was a tragic suicide, but he and somebody had a massive impact on it. You didn't actually go to his funeral, but it's been reported that he actually stopped talking for a few days, quite a few days after the death, and he's obviously inspired by that connection he had with Ronnie to go on and put his all into his rap, and the success that he's had could be attributed to the impact that he had in his life earlier on.
And that leaves him very much at the mercy of the world. He has no male role model. And the men he grew up with, the boys he grew up with, his peer group was not one in which he could belong. He was a white kid in a black neighborhood. He was a white kid who wanted to be something that both whites and blacks were telling him he couldn't be. So you've got nowhere for him to go. And once a boy loses his male role model, well, then the peer group is the substitute. And what did his peer group do to him? Ostracized him, turned him into an outcast.
After Ronnie's death, Marshall became extremely isolated. Hip-hop was his only escape. something that helped him deal with his troubled life. Wanting to get involved in the hip-hop scene, Marshall started getting involved in rap battles, an underground scene where rappers brag, insult, and attack their competitors through improvised lyrics. A few years later, after some of his darkest days, Kim gave birth to a baby girl, Hallie Jade Scott. This was a proud moment for Marshall as he embraced parenthood with open arms. And soon after the birth of his daughter, he released his first solo album as Eminem, titled Infinite.
And shown 8 Mile, Eminem had really become battle tested, quite literally. He would be in battle raps, and he would get a little studio time in Detroit with labels that would just fold about a year later. Nothing really ever became of it, but as time went on, he started to kind of develop his own sort of style. It was still very much based in the old, very much based amongst rappers like, Nas or AZ, and then he did Infinite. And that's really when he started, even back then, he would just say that was him finding his voice.
A lot of people actually thought he sounded a bit too similar to Nas in it, so it prompted him to actually change his sound going forward. It wasn't a commercial success, and it does differ from the rest of his output quite significantly, but at the same time, he needed that album to know the path he needed to go on to have success, so it was a very important part of his career.
Unfortunately, Infinite was not a commercial success, and after its release, Eminem's personal struggles only got worse. Drinks and drugs became part of his everyday life, culminating in an unsuccessful attempt to end his own life.
I think that attempt was actually like a culmination of things. You had the negativity that comes with the album release, then you also had his childhood, his dad left, didn't have any connection. The letters he sent to his dad were returned to sender. You had Ronnie's tragic suicide in there, and he was reportedly bullied at school. So when you add up all these things, it all got on top of him at that point, and he couldn't receive the positivity that was just around the corner.
He's had this dream of being a rap artist, and then he releases his album and then it flops. He's used every resource, every available resource he's got left. This puny, timid, bullied child has got to the point where he's lifted himself up and he's found a means to express himself, and it flops. At that point, his world must have caved in. He must have felt as if whatever he did, there was no way out for him from the prison that he felt he was in, the psychological prison that he felt he was in, and the bars, if you want, that his childhood and his youth had built around him. And at that point, he must have hit absolute despair and thought there is absolutely no way forward for me here.
After his attempted suicide, he went back into underground rap battles. Slowly, he started to make a name for himself, and his volatile personality was beginning to take over. Eminem's underground success led him on a path to the 1997 Rap Olympics in Los Angeles. His appearance at the Rap Olympics would ultimately set him on his way to superstardom and offer him a chance to collaborate with one of the biggest names in hip-hop.
And that was really sort of like his breakout night, From what I've read, to see him perform live was just something that people hadn't really experienced.
He was the only white rapper. But one of the black judges was saying at the time, look, just give it this white kid, he's so much better than all the others. Give the award, give the medal to the white kid. He's the winner by a country mile, because he just had this incredible raw talent. And he was head and shoulders above his peers in terms of his artistic creativity.
There was a style, there was an urgency, there was like something way deeper that came out on that night, which got him his record deal.
Eminem's relationship with Dr. Dre has obviously been one of his most enduring throughout his career. With Dre making his name in NWA and then his solo career, he was always on the lookout for new young talent, and his intern actually heard one of them's rap battles and then gave it to Dre to listen to. And as soon as he heard that, he knew he had to have him on the label, and he flew out to see him, and from there on they didn't look back.
Once I met Dre, it was kind of like I had a vision of where I wanted to take it, and Dre just showed me how to take it there. You know what I mean? it's kind of like we both had the same like vision for myself, you know, where to take it and whatnot. And Dre just showed me how to execute it.
When you first met, this is a question for both of you, what did you think of each other, honestly?
I thought he was a dick. He probably thought worse of me.
I thought he was Tweety Bird. No, because he had this real bright yellow sweatsuit on.
Man, if I hear one more thing about that goddamn sweatsuit, I had this yellow outfit on when I first met Dre. It was like this outfit that a clothing company had given me, and I didn't have money like some people had at the time. You know, so I was going on a week wearing it, so it was actually turning kind of green. But he called me a banana when he met me, so it was on from there.
Eminem had been working on creating an alter ego that would allow him to express his dark side, and not long after he teamed up with Dre, Slim Shady was born.
You know, the whole concept of alter egos is not foreign to hip hop, and a lot of rappers have taken on these other identities to basically say what they really want to say.
You've talked before about having three personas: Eminem, Slim Shady, Marshall Mathers. Could you briefly tell us where one stops, where one begins, and the difference between the three different characters?
Marshall Mathers stops when the Bacardi kicks in, and then it's Slim Shady. Eminem starts when I hit the stage, so that's the best way I know how to answer that.
I think the most important alter ego Eminem had was Slim Shady. While he's not scared to say how he feels and spark controversy, Slim Shady allowed him to go that extra mile and was renowned for being a bit more violent, abusive, drug-related lyrics, sexual abuse, all the